The British National Radio Sound Preservation and Archival Society are proud to present a remastered instalment of the classic 1950s classic serial, The Newer and Further Adventures of Upright, the story of a late Victorian gentleman, based on the novel by Gravelly Stokes, and adapted to a standard sufficient to avoid copyright infringement by Valemere Lake. Episode 8, Homeward Bound.
Hello, I'm back. Lucy Whippet, where have you been and where is my baby? Here it is. Mary, send for Dr. Handy so the baby may be checked out, and I at last discover if I have a boy or a girl or a surprise of some sort. I think it's a boy, for it sounds just like Thomas when it wails. And as to where I have been, I merely borrowed the child for a couple of days to get a lithograph of us taken, printed up in all the newspapers, with a story about having been abandoned by my husband, in the hope he shall see it, think the child is his, and be shamed into coming home with his metaphorical tail between his metaphorical legs. Didn't Mrs. Jiggles tell you? Mrs. Jiggles? Oh, it rings a bell. Oh, but madam, all she says to me is she's a-borrowing the baby for a couple of days to get a lithograph taken, printed up in all the papers, with a story about having been abandoned by her husband in the hope he shall see it, think it is his child, and be shamed into coming home with his tails and his legs, and, well, that could have meant anything. Honestly, Mrs. Jiggles, next you will be saying to me that you know where the mine shaft in the garden is located too, saving us valuable hours. Well... And Mary, as you're still here, before you go, send to the wet nurse and tell her my baby is returned, for I wrote to her telling her not to come as it had been stolen. Yes, madam. But the wet nurse came with me, as arranged with Mrs. Jiggles. Oh, and she has now gone home to collect her things before returning here. Doubtless she will find your note saying the baby's stolen and will not return. Honestly, Sally dear, you do make things difficult for yourself. Go away. Await your errant husband, if he comes.
With Snivellingly gone, and no map to Seagull Island, Whippet reluctantly agreed to go home. To encourage him, I showed him the photograph in the newspaper. I am a father? We must go home now, Whippet, for I shall be a father too very soon. I told my Lucy most specifically not to have a baby. How can this be, Upright? It is one of the great mysteries, Arthur. I do not pretend to understand it. But it cannot be. Can it? Unless, as father always said, a really strong cup of tea with no sugar may... We must go home at once. Hurrah! For although I do not have the treasure to save our house, I have had my fill of adventuring and long to return home. So we shall stay with the circus and work our passage. I suppose we must. And so it was, 3 long months of show after show, before we finally saw England again. You go to your home, Whippet, and I shall go to mine. Well, where else will I go, dolt? Well, But before I could think of a retort, he was off, and I had completed the 17 miles to my home on tired, weary feet. Here we are, Gov. Oh, my tired, weary feet. Thank you for pulling me in your carriage. You ought to have a horse. I can't afford one. I gave my life savings to a conniving woman who said her father had an horse and he'd sell it me. But he's gone broke and they vanished without a trace. That is a remarkable but surely unrelated coincidence. Now I must go and see my Sally. I paid the man and he limped away. Sally! It is I.
Hello, dear. Long time no see.
Mrs. Swivelhurst from number 29. This is not the first time I have come to the wrong house. You may recall from earlier pages of my diary that I spent the first happy week of my marriage with her before noting the absence of my beloved wife.
The room's all ready for you. I'll put the kettle on.
I do not have time today. It is important I get home, for my wife is expecting what may well be our first child.
Oh, but she had it.
Had it?
Yes, it was stolen by all accounts.
Stolen? And by all accounts? This is awful. She will be wanting another. I must go home at once. Stopping for naught but one pot of tea and a delightfully light cream sponge which Mrs. Jiggles could learn much from, I hastened to my own house, only to discover that Whippet is somehow there before me. So you're home at last, Upright. Out of my way, Whippet. I am not here to see you. I am here to be reunited with my one true love.
Oh, well, it's nice to see you too, sir.
I mean my Sally.
Oh,
Thomas, my dear, at last. Sally, sweet Sally.
did you find the treasure to save us?
No, alas, I did not. Oh. Look, never mind all that. Lucy tells me that I am not the father of this baby, but you are. I am? You admit it? You bounder! I shall break your nose.
Arthur, wait. You did not let me finish before rushing out.
Put up your fist, man. Come on, out with them.
It is not my baby either. It is an Upright baby. I only did it because I wanted to bring you home.
Typical. I could be looking for treasure now. Then this is our baby?
Yes.
And Whippet is not its father?
Certainly not.
Oh.
You best sit down, my dear. You look quite faint.
Someone faint.
Dr. Handy.
Try this, young man. Dr. Handy's patent up and sniff. One sniff gets you up, another keeps you regular.
You cannot be ill now, Thomas. We have an old mine shaft to find before midnight, or the house is Mr. Secretly's.
Where is my son? Or daughter? Or...
Here it is. Dr. Handy, which is it?
Oh, now, what we need to do is look in Dr. Handy's handy book of babies and their needs. Let's see. Yes, and yes. You have a daughter, sir. Oh, just a minute. Where are my spectacles? That's better. That wasn't the baby at all. Let's see. Now, here we are. Yes. And, yes. You have a son, sir.
I told you it sounded just like him. That is him. Thomas, stop it.
Oh, it is for shock.
A little Thomas Upright.
Heaven help us.
10 minutes to go. Mr. Secretly, we have another 6 hours yet.
Is that what you thought? This contract is in Australian time.
Then we are doomed. We shall never find the hidden mine shaft now, let alone reopen it and mine enough gold to save us. Come, Arthur, let us return home. There's nothing we can do to help.
If you hurry, you may be in time to rejoin Mr. Rimmer's travelling show. Dr. Handy, I wonder if I might have a word with you. Certainly.
This mine shaft, is it like an hole in the garden? Yes. So if I happened to be out in the garden, having an enormous jiggle, and the ground began to shake and a big crack appear across part of it, that might be a mine shaft about to open. Oh, yes. Where did this happen, Mrs. Jiggles? By the duck pond.
The pond with no ducks?
That's the one.
Well, let us go there and see at once.
Too late. You took so long, the time has passed. This house is mine now. Take me there immediately, and you might keep your job here.
Don't do it, Mrs. Jiggles.
No, sir. This way. Mrs. Jiggles, I've got to do what I've got to do.
At that, the wretched woman led Mr. Secretly outside to a corner of the garden.
Oh, I'm a jiggling. I'm a jiggling. Oh, I'm all of a jiggle. Oh, it's opening. The gold is mine. The mine is mine. No, stop. Too much. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Oh. Mrs. Jiggles, you did that deliberately. I did. I haven't jiggled like that since I was a little girl. It always causes geological disruption, but it's the only way to get rid of some people.
Bravo, Mrs. J.
Only thing is the house will probably follow. What?
The ground beneath the house is opening up. The house will fall in.
Run! All of us! Everyone run!
We ran. Fortunately, Sally, the baby, Mrs. Jiggles and Mary are all safe.
Where's Thomas? He ran the other way. Oh, Thomas!
I found myself falling. Would I too end up back in Australia? Or would I fall to the centre of the earth and drown in its toffee core? I knew not. As it turned out, I woke to see a familiar face gazing down at me. I am imagining things. It cannot be. For it is.
You have been listening to Homeward Bound, being episode 8 of Upright, the newer and further adventures of a late Victorian gentleman, adapted by Valemere Lake from a novel by Gravelly Stokes. Next week, episode 9, Unknown Identities, Exposed.